Mesechta Avoda Zara Mem Hey Amud Aleph, the beginning of the Mishnah, the first line, the Mishnah. In the following Mishnah, he adds about Isuri Hanof from Avoda Zara, and he tells you which items are Asar and which are not Asar as Avoda Zara. Anochnim Hayid Nasad Mesachos Hein Goyim who worship mountains and hills. The mountains and the hills themselves, and you're allowed to carve out stones or plant on the mountain because something that's mechuba doesn't have a name of Avoda Zara. Mash aleim, those things that you put on top of the mountains, like plating it with gold or silver, asurin is asa. Never, like it says in the pasuk, leisachmit kesev v'zav aleim. You shall not covet the silver and gold that is upon them. So there, and it says v'lakach dalach. So this pasuk teaches us that whatever is put over the mountain for beauty, that's Avoda Zara, and it's forbidden to have anah. Even though the mountains and the hills itself are not considered as Avoda Zara and are not asur, but whatever is cover is a cover or plate over the mountain, that's asur. Rabbi Yosef Aglili says this pasuk comes to teach us that mechuba is not asur. From this, that it says that you should destroy all those places that the goyim serve idols. Elaheyam al haharim. It says they're gods on the mountain or on the hills. So it's mashma. Only those forms, images that are on the mountain are considered the Elaheyam, the gods. But not the mountains itself. And it says Abatabim also by Es Elaheyam al-Agvois, on the hills. So it's mashma, only those forms, those statues that are on the hills are considered as their god. But not the hills itself is not considered as the gods. So if we paskin that's a din, anything that's mechuba is not awesome. Why is a tree that they serve as an idol is forbidden and you have to burn down that tree? It says because it has intervention of the hands of a person. Because the hands of a person is what planted the tree. Anything that has intervention to the hands of a person is asmana. Rabbi Akiva said, I will explain and deliberate before you that the pasuk means as follows: wherever you find Hagavaya, Megiva, Nisa, wherever you find a high mountain and a raised hill, and a green tree, Dash, know that the people serve idols there, and there are objects of idols over there. So the Gemara, Rabbi Yosef Aglili, Haidon Tanakama, Rabbi Yosef Aglili, both is the same thing as the Tanakama. They both are moida that the mountains and the hills themselves are muta. So what is the machlokes between them? The tzipui harb kahar, the plating of the mountain, if it has a din like the mountain itself. That's where the difference between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yosef will be. Tanakama tzipui har einikahar. Tanakama holds that the plating over the mountain doesn't have a din like the mountain itself. A mitzar, and it's going to be asur. And only the mountain itself will be mutar. Rabbi Yosef tzipui har areyukahar, that the plating over the mountain is batal to the mountain, and even the plating over the mountain, the halach will be that it's mutar, just like the mountain itself. Now, Shesha says everybody's in agreement that the plating over the mountain is not like the mountain itself, and it's going to be asur. And here we're talking about a tree that, to begin with, he planted it not for the intention of Avoda Zara. And he served as Avoda Zara. That's where they're arguing. Tanakama holds that he planted without the intention for Avoda Zara, and at the end he served as Avoda Zara. Muta is muta because at the time that he planted it, he didn't have the intention for Avoda Zara. So that's not considered as intervention through mankind. Rabbi Yosef HaGalili saw by Ilum Shenatan B'Apsik Havadei also, but Rabbi Yosef HaGalili says it's still asbana, even though to begin with he didn't have the intention to use it for Avoda Zara, because he says it's still different than the mountains and the hills, because the tree you actually planted and the mountains and the hills are natural. In fact, from this that we learned out, the Gemara is going to explain how Rav Sheshes learned the Pirush from the Lashon of the Mishnah. That the kavanah of Rabbi Yosef HaGalili is to asa even a tree that without any intention for Avoda Zara, and at the end he served it. From where do we see that? That Rabbi Yosef HaGalili says that it's still going to have a be asur, the tree itself is going to be asur. Mediktani Seifa, from this time we learned in the Seifa. It says, in the Seifa it says, why is a Asher tree forbidden? Because there is intervention of man. Anything that has intervention of a hand of a person is asbana. And this is what Rabbi Yosef HaGalili repeated with his words, and it said, what is the repetition of a kol sheyesh by tfisa yidei adam come to include? Lav la'asuya, is it not when he repeated this phrase to include ilon shenatayim v'lav sev havadeh? It's coming to include a tree to begin with without the intention of serving it as an idol, and at the end he served it as an idol. Zog the Gemara, there's an additional Tana that holds that an elon that was planted without intention to use it as an idol, and at the end he served it, is also like Rabbi Yosef HaGalili. Who's that? Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Saba. Ilon Shenatanu L'Apseif Avoda Aser. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says that a tree that to begin with, when he planted it without the intention of serving as Avoda Zara, at the end he worshipped it as Avoda Zara, is also. Where do we see that? The Tanya that we learned in Abraisa. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Metei Shenema Lahayim Al HaHarim. The gods on the mountains, and we learned Dafka, what's on the mountains is considered gods, but as Avoda Zara, but not the mountain itself is not going to be considered as Avoda Zara. Same thing, Elohayim al hagvos, the gods on the hills, those are considered as gods which are asbana, idols. But not the hills itself is not going to be considered as an idol. From these words I learn out, so too when it says, "V'tachas kol eitz ranam" comes to teach us under every green tree, Elohayim are idols, but not the green tree itself. Elohim, the tree itself is not going to be considered as an idol. So that's why the pasuk comes to tell you, "Vasharayim tisvim beish." There, the trees have a different din, and we don't learn the same limud like by the mountains and the hills, which in itself is not going to be considered as an idol. It cannot be considered as an idol, versus trees where the Torah B'Feiros forbade a tree itself. Like it says, that the Asherah trees have to be burned. So you see, it's not included in the same limud. We don't learn it in the same limud that the tree itself will not be considered as an idol, just like by the hills and the mountains. So the Gemara explains, what do we learn out from Tachas Kol Eitz Ranam? So what does it mean? Under every green tree, what is he coming to tell us with that pasuk? Tachas Kol Eitz Ranam, what do I need that pasuk if he's not coming to tell you that the tree itself is not considered as an idol? You're saying it does, it is. So what does that pasuk come to teach us? So the Gemara, he's coming to teach us like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva. That Rabbi Akiva had said, Ani Oivin, I will explain. And deliberate before you this pasuk that was said through Moshe to the Bnei Yisrael who entered Eretz Yisrael to teach us the following halacha. Kol makom shata meitza har gavai v'gibelim. And he saw every place where you find a high mountain or a raised hill, and a green tree, you should know there are idols in those places. That's where the Amorim would usually set up their idols. Rabbanan would say a tree that was to begin with planted without the intention of idols, and at the end he served as an idol, is mutabana. So what are we going to do with the pasuk that the Asherah tree should be burnt in a fire? What are we going to learn out from it? Says because the Rabbanan say it's mutter. it's mutabana. So what is Vashem Tisvan Beish coming to teach? That it's coming to, we needed it only for a tree that to begin with was planted to serve as an idol. That's where it's going to be asabana, the tree itself. Otherwise, it's not. If he planted without the intention of serving as an idol and then served, it's not going to be asabana. Vashem Tisvan is the only way to begin with. He had the intention to use it as an idol. Rabbi Yehuda needed this pasuk to teach us that a tree that to begin with was for the sake of Avoda zara, it's going to be asma'ana. So how does he know that even a tree, that's what you learn out from Ashrei and Tisvan B'Eish? So where does he learn out even even a tree that was planted without the intention for Avoda zara, and at the end he served as Avoda zara, it's going to be aser. Says Gemara Hachanami. Yep, even Rabbi Yehuda's Maida Hashem Tisvan B'Eish comes to teach us that a tree to begin with, if it was planted with the intention of L'Shem Avoda zara, it's asbana. How about a tree to begin with when he planted without the intention of Avoda zara and then he served as Avoda zara? Where does he learn? There, it's going to, in that din, it's also going to be forbidden. Bahana. So if you want to nafkalei, he learns it out from other words of the pasuk. Min, he learns it out from the pasuk of Ashrayim Tigadeyun. The Asherah tree you should cut down. The lashon Tigadeyun in this pasuk implies that the Torah commanded only to cut the upper part of that tree, but the root of the tree you can leave and you have enough. Which tree is the cutting down asa ve'ikare muta, but the root is going to be muta? I say, this is referring to a tree that he planted without the intention for Avoda zara, but at the end he served it, he worshipped it as Avoda zara. But Rabbi Yehuda brought the pasuk of Avashareim Tisvan B'Eish to learn the din that a tree that he planted without the intention for serving as idols, and at the end he served as idols aser. He learned it out from Hashem Tisufum, and not from. So how could he now learn it out from the pasuk Vashareim Tigadeyun? It's a different pasuk. And the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda says, if we would have only said, if we wouldn't have said this second pasuk, meaning if the Torah would have not said Vashem Tisvan B'Eish to teach us that a tree to begin with that was planted for Avoda zara is asbana, I would have said that, and I would have said only Vashem Tigadeon. I would have said Vashem Tigadeon comes to teach us that a tree that to begin with that was planted with the intention L'Shem Avoda zara, and at the end he served it as Avoda zara, that's Bama is going to be mutabana, the second half of the tree. I wouldn't have known that it's asa. But now that we know that it's the first, it says the first pasuk where somebody plants a tree L'Shem Avoda zara, and it says there you have to completely burn in a fire. You have the actual pasuk Vashem Tigadeon, and that pasuk is going to teach you that if for a tree that he planted lechatchila not L'Shem Avoda zara and then he served as an idol, that to begin with he planted without the intention of Avoda zara, and at the end he served as Avoda zara. In that case, it's the second half, the first half of the tree you have to cut down. It's asbana. The second half of the tree you're allowed to leave and have anah. According to Rabbanan, let's say a tree that was planted and at the end was served, it's completely mutter. So, hi Vashem Tigadei, my of the what are we going to learn out from that pasuk of Vashem Tigadei? And you look at Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, like Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, the cutting of the trees of idols was done before they conquered Eretz Yisrael. Then Kibush Eretz Yisrael, then goes first, and then goes conquering Eretz Yisrael, which is koydem lebi avitzichavim. Before you uproot whatever's in the grounds, first you cut the top of the tree, and then later, after they conquered, that's before conquering Eretz Yisrael. Then they conquered Eretz Yisrael, and then they went back and uprooted whatever was in the ground, whatever was left over of that Asherah tree. The Torah Rabbi Yosef, and we see similarly that Rabbi Yosef, that we find there's two stages: the cutting the part of the tree, and then coming back and uprooting the whole tree completely. Those two stages we find by v'nitatzlam es mizbechaisam, where it says you should smash their mizbechais that they use for avodah zara. Hanech, leave the pieces there. You don't have to completely destroy it. V'shibartem es matzei v'isam, and you should break the pillars, which was used for avodah zara. V'hanech, and leave the pieces there. You don't have to now completely destroy it. Does it mean that you can leave the pieces and have enough from it? Those pieces of avodah that was used for avodah zara, we know you need to burn it. Avoda said the kavanah of the Braisa was that there's two stages. First, you break it, and then Redaif goes chase after the guy until you completely destroy them. Then comes the second stage, usreif, and burn all those pieces that were left over from what you busted, the mizbeach or the pillars. Those pieces that you left over, you have to go burn them after you destroy all the guy. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, who dashed was a pasuk v'ashereim to Gadeon for the isa of an elan that was planted, and then without any intention of destroying it, serving it as an idol, and then he served as an idol. Says Gemara, Hay Svarim and Nale. From where does he learn out that you have to uproot the avodah zara in two steps according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda? Where does he learn it out from? He already used v'ashereim to Gadeon for the limud of a tree that the chatchila was planted without the intention of avodah zara, and then served as avodah zara, that it's going to be aser and only the top half. So what does he know that there are two stages? Nafkalei, he learns out the two stages from the words abed to abdun. Abed is once, Achakach to abdun is an additional time, the second step. Rabbanan, who learn out that you have to uproot the avodah zara in two steps from abed to from Sheyem to Gadeon. So what do they do with the double lashon abed to abdun? When it says you have to uproot the avodah zara, that you have to uproot even those parts from under the ground. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, from where do you know that you have to uproot whatever's under the ground? He learns it out from this. It says you have to completely obliterate the name, meaning you have to uproot it completely, meaning from underground. Rabbanan, who learned the obliteration, the uprooting from underground, from the pasuk abed to abdun. So what did they learn out from the ibadat meshmam, that you have to obliterate the name from that place? Ahu lechanisla, that's to lechanisla Hashem, to give these idols not the same name they give it, only a degrading name. You have to give it a degrading name in order to obliterate the name. Tanya that we learned in the Braisa, how do you know that you have to uproot the avodah zara completely from underground? That you have to obliterate. He learns out from the words v'ibadam neshmam. You should obliterate the name. Already, we learned this out already. That you have to uproot the idols from underground from abed to abdun. What does he do with the pasuk of ibadam neshmam? He says this pasuk lechanis l'Hashem. It's coming to tell us that you have to give it a degrading name. So I would have thought that you could give it even how do you call it, a complimentary name. Could it enter your mind that you're allowed to give it a avodah zara a shevach name, a complimentary name? Only rather, I would have thought that he could give it a name that's neither not complimentary nor degrading. Comes the Torah and says, you shall surely be meshakitz, loathe. You shall surely disgust this idol for chenemu. It's banned, which shows that the name has to be in a degrading way. Okay, son. How you couldn't? What's the case? Give me an example. How you couldn't nice base galia? They call their church, whatever, the house of the heap. Couldn't nice base galia? Then we have to call it the house of the ditch, or they call it ein koil. They call the idol the eye of everything. So you have to call it ein koitz, the eye of the thorn.